right, welcome everyone. Today is August 14th, 2024. Welcome to the meeting of SIG-Auth. Let's kick it off with items on the agenda. We don't have anything here, so 132 planning. Yes, let's go to this doc.
The treadmill never stops. 131 was yesterday. Time to start 132.
Yeah. So I think a bunch of us went through this during the SIG-Auth triage meeting. Most of these were basically things from 131 or just backlog items. So these are ones that's already determined implementable. I'm just gonna go through them. Comments, anything here that needs to be.
I'm happy to hear any opinions to the contrary. I just did a sweep of things that, as far as I can tell, are complete and are not pending anything and seem useful to make solidly available, especially the pod node information one and the JTI one.
I agree.
Wait, they're beta, right? So that you get them now, right?
They're default on, but they can still be turned off. And so, like, if we want to write policies assuming they're on, we kind of can't assume they're on until they're locked on, which comes with GA. So yeah, in all clusters that I know about, people are not turning this off, but you could still turn it off. I know a couple folks on our side were interested in the node restricted service account thing, but I think that's a separate cap that makes use of the information in the tokens from this cap.
I agree, and in light of the feature for field and label selectors, I'd really be interested in a mechanism that allowed me to describe how to use it on particular kinds of objects.
Are you talking about the, what are you talking about? The claim from?
So being able to authorize with field selectors means, in combination with knowing what node something came from, it's nice to be able to describe, for a type, this field matches a node. Do a logically sensible thing.
Okay, can you describe that in a reply to my comment? And maybe when we spin up the discussion of node scoped stuff, that would be a thing to include there. You're envisioning for custom types, right?
I am, right. I think that someone writing a CSI driver or a CNI plugin is looking and saying, I have these other types available. I have node names. I have a field spec node name. I really want to restrict my node bound thing to looking at it where my node bound value, my node value, matches that field. So yeah, I'll describe that briefly.
Okay. Yeah, leaning on validating admission policy for rights is a little fiddly, but I can imagine how to describe it. For reads and selectors, we don't really have a great answer.
Yeah, I think the best solution will find a way to auto manage both, clearly. But yes.
All right. Yeah, we can keep moving. If people have reservations about promoting any of these to beta, please, or GA, mention it here or in the PR where we update the cap targets.
Okay, might be helpful just to add a little bit of thought, like why why some of them GA in 32 and one in 33?
Yeah.
They're all supposed to work together. Would that be confusing?
One is about validation of tokens, and one is about creation of tokens. And so we need to make sure that validation of those tokens is locked on at least one release before we lock on generation of those tokens. So we phased it in the same way. We defaulted on validation of node bound tokens a release before we defaulted on being able to create those tokens. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fair. Anything else for SA token, bound SA token?
Keep moving.
All right. Next one, auth structure auth n.
Yeah, so we kind of diverse on this a little bit, Rita, since we spoke about it in the triage meeting. So
Mhm.
I think Anish and I are currently planning not to really do much on this other than the one PR that Anish already has open. Mostly because we haven't been able to consume it downstream yet. And that to us is like important to make sure that it actually does the thing. And also, we haven't really gotten necessarily many field reports. But I think I don't see Max on the call, but I think I vaguely saw that he might be poking around and using it for something, but otherwise I don't really know if anyone's actually using it yet. So I mean, it has known gaps, but those gaps have existed forever, basically. So it's not like a new gap, really. But yeah, so I think we were just gonna leave it alone, hope people use it some more and give it some actual feedback.
The behavior changes like the JTI thing and the tightening of the validation, that's good to do in beta. So I agree with that. But I'm fine with leaving it in beta, getting more feedback. I would like to wait until at least one person we know of is using it widely in production. So if that's you, that's awesome. I think that would be a good thing to do before we GA it.
Do you think, I mean, we can do the JTI thing, it's minor. Do you think that is requirement right now for 132? So I think the stricter validation is because it compresses what someone can try to tell us. But I wasn't too stressed about the JTI thing. But
I don't think it's a requirement. If it's useful and easy, getting useful and easy things to people earlier is nice.
Okay. So I mean, we can. I mean, that one's really small, so we can just also add that to this release.
In general, like the ideal, I think, is for the promotion to GA to be like no behavior changes. Like what we released in the previous version was great. Everyone loves it. We promoted it with no behavior changes. And so if we're wanting to promote this like in 133, it would be great to get the behavior changes we know we want to make in place for 132.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on. But by the way, this is a pretty common thing, right? Like, is it because auth features are generally like people don't, maybe betas are just harder for people to test for auth things?
What is a common thing? Like multiple.
Like until a feature is stable, it's harder for people to test, I think.
I mean, so I'll state my very opinionated opinion on that, which is we treat alphas and betas very differently than most people, right? When we ship an alpha, it's basically done. And then it doesn't really change much.
Yeah, security stuff. It's like you can't merge if we're not like 99% sure on it.
Yeah, I guess I'm just
staying in
seeing
beta.
low adoption for things in alpha and beta.
Yeah, a lot of these are like admin facing config things.
Yeah,
I don't know. For for authorization config, we're using it now. We found a couple bugs. We fixed them in the 131 timeframe. I'd be okay with leaving it in beta or with going to GA. feature complete as far as we know. So I'm fine with either. The promotion would basically just be the config bump. So
David, I saw you briefly unmute, so you had some feedback.
I was also just gonna say you can't merge it and then have an oops and expecting people to use it. Yeah, you aren't not gonna turn it on until it's basically done. So.
But okay, so on Auth config, Jordan, it looks like you guys are using it and feel really good about it. Okay. I mean, that's personally good enough for me that someone has actually reasonably kicked the tires on it. And by the way, what were the bugs?
Timeout wasn't wired up. And the way that timeout errors from the backend were detected was not correct. So if the timeout actually kicked in, the metric reporting wouldn't be correct.
Oh, okay.
So that works now.
Okay, so are we?
Good.
So I think we're gonna say that in 132 Auth structured Auth config is gonna go GA with probably no changes other than things are V1 now.
Yeah. And we can advertise this more broadly. We can sort of send out a summary so that if people on the mailing list have feedback or concerns, we hear those. But
Oh, 130, I guess.
No, 132. You're going in the past, Rita.
No, I'm saying I got some feedback in 130,
sorry.
right? Right? That's
Yep.
Okay, cool. Alrighty. This guy.
Okay, so cluster trust bundle, yeah, we want to get this to beta. I don't know if Standa opened a PR to update the KEP with the beta criteria. I think my biggest open question on this is exactly how we handle enablement of this feature and stuff because it spans kubelet and API server. Would we make it a beta feature on kubelet that then tries to detect if API server has it enabled and then uses it? So that way, I don't know. I'm just I wasn't exactly sure how to make it work exactly, or like what the pattern was supposed to be. Yes.
We've done a variety of things. Sometimes old kubelets just ignore the feature. So if you ask for a thing and an old kubelet doesn't know about it or has it disabled, you just don't get the thing.
Wait, like you could ask for a cluster trust bundle volume and it just would just silently ignore you?
I don't know if we've done that for new volume types.
We've definitely just made it fail for new volume types.
Okay. So like if you go to an old kubelet and there's a new field in pod that it doesn't know about, like whatever that new field was supposed to do, you will not get on that old kubelet. Sometimes it'll run the pod as if that field wasn't set. Sometimes that field not being set makes the pod invalid in some way, and the kubelet like chokes and says, "I can't deal with this." For fields which the kubelet knows about, but which are disabled by a feature gate on the kubelet, I think I've seen both types of behavior. Sometimes the kubelet will just ignore it. Sometimes the kubelet will actually intentionally fail the pod and say, you set this field, but this feature is off. Therefore, I will not run this pod. For security, for fields with security implications, we encourage kubelets to refuse to run pods that set fields that the kubelet won't honor. So something like user namespaces. I believe.
We'll talk about this separately and later, Jordan.
Okay. Like separately in this meeting or separately
No.
in a dark room, like with scary people?
Yeah.
Okay. If there are security implications, I would expect a kubelet to refuse to run a pod if it's asking for a security related feature that the kubelet can't honor. If it's a functional feature, I think it's also probably better to just not run the pod. If it's an old kubelet that doesn't know about the field, you're going to get it, but it's going to act as if it doesn't know about the field. All that to say, I would expect a kubelet that knows about the field but has the feature off to refuse to run the pod. If we give control of the feature enablement at the kubelet level. Another possibility is the control of the feature enablement is just presence in the API, and you only gate it in the API server. And once a pod with that field shows up, the kubelet is just going to honor it. And if you don't want the kubelet to do stuff with cluster trust bundles, clear out the API data that requests them. I'm not sure that is. I'm not sure we can completely do that because this is a beta API. And so if we were expecting the kubelet to like list watch all cluster trust bundles, we don't want to spin that up by default because by default the beta API will be off, and by default that informer will just 404 against those endpoints eternally.
Is it okay to do the sort of the simple thing, kind of like what Kube Controller Manager does, which is just discovery on startup, see what API server advertises? If it has the beta or alpha API, use it. If it doesn't, then just don't use it.
Need to think about that. Upgrade lifecycle of control plane is different than nodes. So if you get your nodes starting up at one point in time,
right?
I'm not sure. Anyway, we can iron this out in the KEP. Like progressing to beta, I think is a reasonable thing to do, but we do definitely need to think through the enablement path. Was there more? This says this requires 132 kubelet. Was there more stuff there?
Yeah, so we had also discussed publishing cluster trust bundles for the well-known signers, but not consuming them, but just publishing them so others could consume them if they wanted to. It's been a long time, but it is recorded as that's what we said we were going to do in one of our old meetings. But I don't think we ever updated the KEP for that, which is why I asked Donna to go back and watch the recordings and turn our action items into changes to the KEP. I think those were there, and then I think we decided that we just wanted a document that KXIO was reserved for our usage, and if you decided to use it, we are not going to feel bad in the future if we somehow break you because you stepped on our names. I don't know if we wanted anything stricter. I'm not even sure what stricter would look like exactly, but yeah, so I think those were some of the bigger stuff. And I think Standa has PRs open that adds more E2E tests because I don't think we had good E2E coverage on it. So I think that will be there. But I think I feel pretty good about getting this to beta, I think in 132.
Okay.
Sorry, I may have missed this. So can you just come back and add more details, Jordan?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't get all of this. Okay. Authorizes field and label selectors.
Yeah. So I'm open to either progressing to beta in 132 or waiting. Waiting until Mo shows a POC, for instance. We are using it in the node authorizer, so we have confidence that's actually plumbed through properly, that's wired, and as I recall, we actually had a test ready to become an E2E test for it that actually verified the hook was sent properly. So
I think all the tests are actually integration tests. but-
right. But once we get it, if we enable it by default, we'd be able to migrate one of them to be an EDE test.
Yeah.
Say that works. Because I do believe this would be something we would end up wiring for conformance.
Yeah.
So
I would like to see the node authorizer piece active sooner than later.
Okay.
So I would like to see it beta in 132. I do think it would be worthwhile to get an experience report with a webhook consumer. So I think I would want that before we graduate it to beta. But
I think the way we did the feature gates, you have to have both webhook and node to get node, right? You can't have just node.
yeah,
I mean, I guess I know why we did it that way, but I'm a
experience
little
beyond-
nervous about. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask whether that was experience beyond. Oh, you can't self-configure in standard QBD. All right. I'll give that a little bit more thought then for how we'd be able to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm a little nervous about default enablement without necessarily someone outside of us testing it in our test places, like even vaguely stage or prod would be nice. Not that I necessarily really expect anything to go wrong here.
And this progression is also separate from the node authorizer.
It is.
they're a little bit coupled right now. They don't have to
Yeah.
be. We could, if we wanted to enable the core bits, we could like add another gate, and so we could enable the node path and not the webhook path. I guess there's three surface areas, right? There's the node authorizer behavior. There's what we send out to webhooks. And then there's what we allow in cell expressions.
And in sending to webhooks, there's also the match conditions that allow you to filter.
Yeah.
That's what gets sent. Yeah. I would rather do those together. It would be really. It would seem strange to me to get the entry aspect and say, "Yeah, we're sorry, no one else can look at this."
Yeah.
That's out of keeping with anything else we've.
Hey, we're special, David. We like to. We like.
Yeah. So. Okay. I will think about how to get some kind of webhook feedback on there. More than an integration test. Like I'm trying to think, like, what would we say we did wrong if we properly sent it and we properly received it?
I mean, the integration tests do that already, and Jordan found some minor.
So, like, what additional feedback would we like from our webhook?
Well,
I
like
found the experience of writing this webhook to be pleasurable.
I mean, yes, I would like people to say that, but like I'm thinking about, like, for example, timeouts weren't wired for authorization config, and I guess that got caught somehow or another, or the metrics wasn't working right. So just like, I don't know, I tried to use it for reals, and some tiny bits didn't work that tests didn't really care too much about, or tests masked because they don't time out.
Yeah, I don't know. I found like nitpicky issues when I wrote the tests, like normalization order, and so I feel like the types of things you would find when you were actually using it for real, I kind of already found. The surface area we're actually very confident in because it's exactly the label selector surface area we already have and then mimicked for field selector. So in terms of behavior, I'm confident to promote it to beta now. In terms of API surface, I can't imagine us changing course on it. And we actually thought a lot about like how we would evolve in the future to add new operations if we ever do that. So actually, I take back everything I said. I'm happy going to beta now.
You've convinced yourself.
I
I
did.
thought you would be, Jordan. I am.
Okay, fine.
I take it back. I was awesome with the tests I wrote.
I mean, that was one of the most heavily tested and reviewed PRs, I think, of the last cycle. So I feel good about it.
Okay.
But here, I think you're basically saying this can be done as part of tests. I think that's what you concluded, right?
Yeah, the example
I'm-
webhook is a test. I mean, I'm happy if Mo wants to like build more things that make use of the data.
Oh yeah. So my POC is not meant to be in any way gating on this. That was just me wanting to play around with stuff and experiment, so that way we.
Well, we're gonna have it for KubeCon, right?
Yes, I know that's
Yeah.
it's my conference-driven development of POC stuff, but that actually doesn't change any.
The selector stuff we kind of talked about in the reference grant meetings. If authorizing on selectors, do we know if any of the folks involved there were interested in like proof of concept integrations that would authorize on labels based on some of the reference grant objects? I thought that was discussed. That might be something to ask about if could try it out. And
Yeah, so I think that would be probably good, but I think, are we saying for promoting to beta in 132, we would just either make a new test or take an existing test, put it into an EDE, and just use it?
you can't configure going out to webhooks. We could test the cell stuff in.
Mhm.
And we'd be able to test the inbound aspect.
What are which inbound aspects?
I can submit a subject access review that has this, and it is properly wired through and honored, because you can hit the internal node authorizer.
Yeah, so you could exercise the node authorizer. You could exercise the cell expressions in.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably fine.
Okay.
Okay.
So who's gonna follow up on this?
Uh,
Reference grant.
I will ask that.
Okay, great. All right, next. Also, I'm looking forward to the demo. Woohoo. Let's see, and the talk, obviously. Ensure image will kept changes.
Sorry, one quick question on the previous one. So we are going to progress field label selector auth-C. Are we also progressing the node authorizer
I
to
would
beta
progress
too?
them at the same time.
Yeah,
cool.
The only reason I put a separate gate there was because we know people are piggybacking random stuff on kubelet credentials, and so that specifically, like being more restricted there, seemed likely to break someone doing something weird, and so I wanted them to be able to toggle that off while they fix their stuff without losing the surface area for the other things.
Cool.
Ensure image pulls. So this is a collaboration with SIG-Node. I think SIG-Node owns the KEP, but we have lots of opinions about it.
That's putting it lightly, Jordan.
Yeah.
We might have to put the actual doc in there, right? The one that we've been.
Yeah, I was trying to find that. So we, Mo and Standa and I talked through like use cases and then met with the Node folks who have been working on this earlier this week. I think we got high level agreement on sort of the goals and behavior we don't want to break or change. And so we have another meeting set up next week to keep iterating on sort of the fine grained points of this. So it's technically still a SIG-Node KEP, but we're very involved. Why can't I find the doc?
Okay.
Which doc? The
Yeah,
KEP?
No, it's not linked in there. That's why. Let's see.
Oh, like a discussion doc. Okay.
Yeah.
Called ensure image secret notes is probably why. see you on the doc. Did you find it?
Yeah, I found it.
Overall, though, I think we've made some really good progress in those conversations. I think Standa even opened a PR, right, to the step to update it. So we need to review. We still have to nail down all the specifics of the design changes. Like I think like how state gets stored on disk.
Yeah, like that's probably more under SIG-Node and API review, like, compatibility structures on disk and node guarantees around behavior kubelet upgrades. Like the auth involvement is like, what are the security guarantees? And so as far as the discussions here, like the security guarantees are the ones we care about. Can we put names? I think we did a decent job putting people's names by things. So I'm reviewing both from an auth and API perspective.
And this looks like this is going beta in 132.
No.
Well, it says here.
No.
It's never merged, Rita.
Well, no, I'm just saying, what's the plan?
The goal is a merged alpha in 132.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is wrong too.
Yeah, they tried last release and the
Okay.
release for that to get it in.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Let me put this. Okay, yeah. Because I think we try to have this. What is it like? So this would be like promote to beta, right?
Yep.
And then so here we would be.
I mean, I'll do that.
Okay, there we go. All right.
All right. And as always, anyone else who wants to jump in and look at stuff or help with stuff is certainly welcome to. But yeah, hopefully iterating on this and pinning stuff down early in the cycle will let this actually get merged.
All right, next. Beta.
This was a very small change. It's very well understood. I don't see any reason not to promote this to beta.
So Jordan, I didn't review the actual. I only reviewed the KEP really. I didn't look at the code and stuff. But if you feel confident in the code and the tests, and I honestly can't imagine it being much because it's like touching like one authenticator with something big.
Yeah.
I guess when it goes beta or even before then, maybe GKE will use it. I know maybe Micah, I think you said maybe EKS was interested as well. So good.
I expect we will use it in beta.
Right. But I think that's fine. So when it goes beta, I don't think we should GA it without somebody saying they used it and they were happy with it. And I think that'll be easy to find people willing to do that.
So tests are good, feedback's good.
So I think we will get feedback in once it's beta from I think a variety of places, and that will I think inform us if we're ready to go GA, and we don't expect any issues here.
Okay. Anything else? No? Okay. What about these?
So there's two tiny little blurbs for the fine grade kubelet API authorization and the PSA changes. I couldn't remember exactly who was guiding those keps forward and who cared about them, but I didn't want to forget them.
Vinayak opened the fine-grained authorization one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hey, sorry. I'm
Hey.
here. Yeah, so I opened this and we briefly discussed this in SIG-Auth. And I have a pull request for this enhancement, and we're going to talk about it in SIG-Node as well on the 20th. So it's on the SIG-Node agenda to see what their thoughts are on this. There were some concerns about like, hey, like the pod/API isn't really documented, and do we want to do this for like an undocumented API? And we were like, sure, could we just document the API and do it? Because there's a bunch of third-party tools that already use this today. And so would you break them, or like how much, like it's not a lot of work to kind of make them more secure, but it's also like probably going to encourage a behavior that we don't want to. So I was wondering like, hey, like if nothing should be using it, then should we turn it off and ask everybody to go through the API, the Kubernetes, like the QAPI server? And if it's there, then it's not a lot of work or not a lot of overhead that we're adding to make the usage secure. So maybe we can just document them and then make this change in addition to making it a little more secure.
Is this KEP owned by Node or Auth?
I think it's like in the intersection of both. So probably SIG-Node and SIG-Auth, but
Like
I'm not 100%.
The auth considerations don't seem that thorny. Like we have a broad authorization, we can define more fine-grained things and check both, like, and backfill the built-in roles, which is only one, so that the one in-tree thing, which is kubeAPI server, continues to have access via one authorization check to kubelet stuff. Like that doesn't seem that difficult. All the thorny questions seem to be on the node and API side. Like, what are the right endpoints to partition out, and what are the API guarantees about that? Like, those are good questions that should be settled. I'm not sure SIG-Auth cares about those, but they are good questions that should be settled before we proceed. So I'm happy to leave that in node and API discussions.
Okay.
Currently under
So
SIG-Auth, though.
Say again?
It's currently under SIG-Auth right here.
Yeah, I think it's the intersections, like whichever it is, like one SIG will own it and the other SIG will be participating. But what the exact slicing is and what the API stability implications are of the things that get sliced out need to be pinned down.
cool, thanks.
Who added the PSA host namespaces?
Was it SIG Network folks? There was they want the host field.
Oh, this wasn't host namespaces. This was host fields in probes, right?
Nope. Go ahead.
Do you have a reference?
There was like hold on, it's in the agenda. I'll find the doc where they.
Is this the one?
Excellent. Who was?
It's Dan Winship and the other person name I can't remember. So yeah, things yes, both red hatters. David, do you know if they're gonna push all of this stuff in 132? Hopefully.
This is gonna sound bad. I don't recognize this one actually. Is it? Oh, is this the one where you can set a probe to point to something that isn't your pod?
Yes.
Oh man, yeah.
I mean, it's poor form.
Uh-huh.
You do that?
No, I don't know how strongly they're planning on pushing it. It did seem like a thing worth fixing. Not fixing. A thing worth marking because I'm certain people depend on it now.
Yeah. So it's the PR is filed under SIG Network. I'm +1 on this direction and closing this for things that have opted into baseline and restricted. That seems very sensible to me. I'm happy to consult on it, but I don't know that this is top priority to drive. So,
would you review a PR adding it to the pod security admission?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I think that's all we're being asked to do.
Yeah. Did we say we were gonna purely lean on PSA versioning for this, like no feature grade? Right? That's what we said, right?
Yeah.
That if you ask for latest or 132 or higher versioned PSA, it would just be tighter and it would prevent you from doing stuff on restricted and baseline. Basically, you would need privileged to get to do these bad things.
Yeah. Using probes to go to hosts that aren't your pod needs, well, definitely localhost. I haven't read what they're proposing. If it's use of the field at all requires privileged, you need to think about that. Like anyway, but
yeah.
Limiting use of the host field to get host permissions is definitely in bounds for baseline.
Yep.
All right. External signing for service account tokens.
So we're gonna, I think, meet up with that about that tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Yep.
There's a doc that I can link to as well. I would like to see movement here. We'll see if we can settle on a design that works for everybody for an alpha for 132. But I would like to see forward motion here.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll be there.
Mike,
I'll be there.
So I think we'll have the right folks, and I think we want Tahir and somebody else from GKE, right, Jordan?
Yeah, I'll be there. Tahir will be there. That should be fine.
I think we got the right folks, and I think we can nail it down. But
yeah, so I dropped a link to the document where we're sort of iterating fast on questions and proposals and things, and then that'll fold back into a CAP update.
Yep.
Okay, next, hot certificates.
Yeah, so on this one, we're Standa and myself and others, we're gonna try to poke at this and try to get this to if we can get an alpha kep in 132, that'd be great. If it's too big, then just sometime in 132, if we could agree on the design. It's kind of what we're targeting. But I know Tahir already has like a starting point kept, so it's a matter of trying to agree on what the pieces have to do.
The existing stuff we have is probably going to consume my bandwidth. I don't foresee a lot of time to put into this for 132 from my side.
Okay. That's fine. But David, do you have any interest? Just so I know.
I have an interest, but if it comes down to this or reference grants, I would choose to devote my energy to reference grant.
Okay. Since reference grant is the next one on the list, what are you hoping to happen for reference grant in 132?
For that, I would ask how far Rob is planning on pushing it. If he's not planning on pushing it, then reviewing a design for pod certificates is plausible for me. But if he is planning on pushing forward, trying to build a POC out for a new kind of authorizer, I'd rather devote my time there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how much Rob and Nick and others want to push reference grant this release, but certainly having the label selector and stuff become beta, it might be encouraging. Jordan, are you wanting to do anything for reference grant?
I'm not sure how much capacity I have. I'm a reviewer on a lot of other things.
Yeah, I think I kind of feel the same way. Like I'm interested in it, but I was, for me, I think in the Auth space, my primary effort was going to be poking around, playing around with RBAC and the label selector stuff. But that's just meant as a POC and an exploratory exercise. That's not meant as a.
You keep saying that after every time you mention it.
I know, because it stresses you and David out every time I mention it. So that's why I have to qualify it. So that way I don't stress you out too much.
It definitely does.
It does, especially the reuse RBAC part of it. If it didn't reuse RBAC, I'd be a lot less scared.
Don't worry. I have thought about a lot of the things that would make you nervous about that part. So don't worry too much.
All right. So pod certificates, reference grant, protected service account tokens. Those three, are those on the bubble for 132? Like it's unclear to me if.
So the projected service account token stuff, Anish and another person downstream, or I know they're planning on getting a KEP out for this one. So this one I'm happy to review and stuff. That it's like the framing I have around it makes it really small. So I'm not too worried about it. This one is, mixed between us and SIG-Node anyway. And I think Node folks were interested last time as well.
Am I reading pod certificates correct? Like alpha KEP? So are we looking for a design in the 132 timeframe? Or are we?
Or sorry, pod certificates or projected service account token?
Well, any of these three, KEP and alpha implementation. Okay.
Yeah. So I think for the projected service account tokens for kubelet credential providers, I think they're gonna do KEP and initial implementation.
Is an implementation realistic if it depends on the secret pulled images and that itself is like,
So I think so, right? In the sense that the behavior of pre-loaded images is broken in kubelet. This doesn't really change that. So, but can you use a service account token to cause an image pool to work? That is really the focus of this KEP, and obviously it needs to be coherent with the other one. But yeah, I'm not too worried about the fact that they touch the same things in slightly different ways. But you're right. I don't think this could ever go anywhere near beta without the insured image pool stuff, because it'd be really silly.
okay.
Yes, but it is a lot. I do realize that.
All right, I'm trying to toss like size estimates, just so we have a sense for like, is this a trivial promotion thing? Is it like a little consultation from the SIG-Auth side, but most of the work is on other SIGs, or is this a biggish thing? So maybe pod certificates seems big.
Yep, I would agree.
Projected service account tokens, big. Reference, big.
I think that one's medium. Or
Really?
maybe it's there's no REST API. It's just you tweak a thing and say, hey, please give me a token, and then what happens with the token isn't your responsibility. It's actually very small.
Okay.
I mean, I purposely did not try to necessarily make it the most amazing and fully feature rich thing because it doesn't have a REST API. It also makes it smaller and easier to like build, right? It's just contained within the kubelet and its credential provider.
Okay. I'm not sure I see the data flow. It seems like you're missing bits of data that you need to get the pod and service account information from the credential provider or to the credential provider. But maybe I'm missing it. Maybe we could do, well, we're almost out of time. I am guessing that none of the stuff that is in the not planned for 132 list is going to bubble up. It seems like we're kind of already running out of capacity.
So Damien had reached out to me about the undecryptable resources, and I think he said, David, you're too busy. And so then I asked him, maybe ask Joe or Stefan if they care, because it's really as much API machinery as it is auth. It might even be more API machinery than auth. Yeah, I don't. You are either, Jordan. Yeah, I do agree. It is a pretty packed one. The only thing making it better is what we're saying is like a lot of our bumps are like promoting with no changes, or we're not touching it really.
Yep. Would you say cluster trust bundle is medium? I think the implementation work is mostly done. It needs like some test stuff and the publishing and the enablement planning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if a lot of the work hadn't already been done, then I would easily say it's really big. But
Okay.
Maybe we should focus on all the small things first and just knock them out.
Yeah, we have a lot of promotion things that are either just simple promotions or just need a test or need some docs. The two big efforts are, I think, are the image pull secret stuff and the external signing thing. Those are the two most complicated designs that I see in the list. The cluster test bundle enablement stuff is like needs to be thought through, but it's not greenfield. Like it's just how do we roll this out safely? I guess the next step is making sure that everyone has their names on the things that they are actually working on or planning to be available to review, and like add up your own sizes and make sure you're not overcommitted. If you are, like raise your hand early so we can swap you out for someone, or like try to load balance, like get some things done early in the cycle instead of everything landing like in 6 weeks.
All right, well, thanks everyone. That concludes today's off meeting.
Good.
Bye.
Well, here.